For 52 days, detectives have hunted for clues. It has been 52 days since Nancy Guthrie disappeared from her house in Tucson during the pre-dawn hours of February 1st, 2026. Most people figured they understood the situation. Some kind of brutal scuffle, a physical assault, or total mayhem within those walls. However, fresh findings point toward a totally unique reality. The forensic traces found in Nancy Guthrie's residence recount a tale nobody foresaw. This isn't about aggression or turmoil. It depicts a much more unsettling scenario. Poise, accuracy, intentional motion, and the specific spot where police located those stains upend our entire understanding of the 16 minutes from her camera failing to her heart monitor's last transmission. Stains were identified within Nancy Guthrie's property. They weren't spread throughout various areas. Not even in the sleeping quarters where Savannah Guthrie claimed her mom was snatched from bed while it was pitch black. Not in the lounge or eating area. Instead, it was concentrated in a single place that explains how Nancy was removed from the premises. A forensic specialist who has provided testimony in 7 different states plus federal proceedings has scrutinized these marks. His findings defy the initial theories that guided the detectives from day one. He believes this situation is far from what people originally imagined. Everything was calculated. It was done with discipline. Whoever committed this act operated with total certainty. This report draws from open records, professional reviews, News Nation coverage by Ashley Banfield, and formal press releases. Every person remains innocent until a legal verdict proves otherwise. Certain points mentioned reflect professional views on physical clues and potential theories. So, who was Nancy Guthrie? Nancy Anna Guthrie entered the world on June 24, 1941, in Tucson, Arizona. For 84 years, she maintained her own lifestyle within her cherished neighborhood. She was the mother of Savannah Guthrie, who hosts the Today Show on NBC. Yet, to the Tucson locals, Nancy was famous for her own character, her quick wit, self-reliance, and intense desire for a quiet life defined her. At 84, she resided by herself at her East Cala Tumaca Corey house in the Catalina foothills. She handled her own transportation and ran her daily affairs. Relatives called her cognitively bright. Her mother was not the type to simply drift away. Late on January 31st, 2026, her son-in-law Tommaso gave her a ride home around 10 p.m. following a party. She entered her residence, secured the door, and turned in for the night. Shortly thereafter, she vanished. By 5:52 a.m. on February 1st, nobody could get a hold of her. Relatives showed up to discover red stains on the porch, a broken security cam, and a clip of a disguised person creeping up at night. For several weeks, everyone looked at those external stains, the trail heading down the garden path, and what those markings signified. Yet, one specific fact stayed under wraps. A secret the police held close while the general population remained unaware. Those stains actually began indoors. Before we explore the implications of this news and how it reshapes the timeline, make sure to follow Crime Uncovered and hit the bell for all updates on this mystery. We dig into the crucial facts that flip the script, the proof that reveals the truth, the high-level study that solves crimes. Because here, the interior location of those traces alters the entire narrative. Now, let's examine the latest findings. Since February 1st, 2026, a single mystery has plagued the entire search. What actually occurred within those 4 walls? We are aware that a hooded person walked up to her porch at 1:47 a.m. We know that video feed cut out then. We have proof of movement inside the dwelling at 2:12 a.m. We also know her cardiac device stopped transmitting at 2:28 a.m. Just 16 minutes. That is the time frame. But what took place during that short interval? Which room was the starting point? How did she get from the bedroom to the exit? Everyone just assumed there was a fight. A brawl in her sleeping quarters. Nancy resisting. The attacker using brute strength, havoc, and aggression. The forensic patterns suggest a totally contrasting situation, based on the journalism of Ashley Banfield from News Nation, who has contacts tied to the case. They found biological evidence inside the Guthrie residence. It wasn't in the bedroom or the corridor outside it, nor was it scattered around like there had been a pursuit or a wrestling match. Right at the front entryway, Just inside the door, the blood trail looks exactly like the one found outside. Identical downward drips, the same pristine look, the same features. The trail actually starts right there in the entryway. It crosses the front door's threshold and follows the walkway, ending right where a car would typically be parked. We're just now hearing this for the first time, and it sparks some big questions. If the attack happened in Nancy's room, why was it clean? If she'd been dragged, where's the trail leading to the door? And if a fight broke out, why are these drops perfectly round and untouched? Seeking some clarity, Ashley Banfield reached out to Dr. Peter Valentine, who heads the Forensic Science Department at the University of New Haven. Dr. Valentine is a seasoned bloodstain expert with experience in 7 states and federal court. His take on this evidence is as eye-opening as it is chilling. The blood patterns scattered around Nancy's place recount those 16 minutes that flipped her world upside down. Dr. Valentine labeled them as simple drip stains. That's blood falling strictly due to gravity, without any extra force. This wasn't a violent hit or a messy struggle. It was just dripping. That nuance is vital. These clean, downward spots tell a specific story to the police. This was unhurried. It was steady. It was intentional. In a running scenario, the drops elongate and indicate travel. If a person is dragged, you see smears. A fight leaves chaotic marks, like shoe prints or messy streaks. We see none of that here. The spots are perfectly round, meaning the source stayed right above and moved gently enough to keep the fall straight. The marks are intact, so nobody walked over them. No wrestling occurred there. Most tellingly, Dr. Valentine noted what he calls secondary satellite splashing. These are small mist-like spots formed when new liquid hits a pool that is already sitting on the ground. This occurs when the origin point stays still long enough for several drops to hit the exact same patch. A drop hits, then another follows, causing a tiny impact. Small flecks then spread out. This presence indicates something very important. Nancy, or her captor, paused at the doorway for what the doctor described as a substantial duration of time. They weren't just passing by. They weren't in a hurry. They paused. Something at that door took a moment. Perhaps opening the heavy entrance, shifting their weight, getting ready for the next step of the kidnapping. During that delay, the blood pooled and fell. Consider the implications of that. The individual who snatched Nancy didn't freak out. He didn't hurry. He didn't slip up. He was poised. Now, let's look at a heavily discussed topic. Did the blood come from Nancy directly, or from an item covered in it? Some argue the assailant used a tool, and the dripping came from that object instead. Dr. Valentine's findings dismiss that theory for a specific reason. If you're carrying a bloody object, the amount of fluid available to leak naturally tapers off. A saturated item holds a limited volume. As it leaks, the supply dwindles. Consequently, the gaps between stains widen because there's just not enough liquid to keep up a steady flow. However, the trail through Nancy's home remains perfectly uniform. The spacing doesn't stretch out at all. Instead, it looks exactly like what you'd see from a constant, living source. We're talking about a human wound, not just some soaked rug. The sheer amount found in both locations suggests these were fresh droplets falling directly from Nancy herself. Sheriff Chris Nanos has already stated that the DNA matches Nancy. There was never any doubt about the identity of the person who bled there. The real mystery has always centered on what these markings reveal about the struggle. This is exactly where Dr. Valentine's specialized knowledge becomes indispensable. To get those perfect circular stains from vertical drops, nothing can get in the way. The liquid has to fall straight down without getting soaked up by fabric or hitting an obstacle. It has to be a clean, free fall. For an injury on her face or head to do this, her body would have to be oriented just right for gravity to pull it toward the floor. The roundness of the spots proves the wound was positioned right above the impact point. Consider the logistics. If she were walking normally, her head would be stacked directly over her feet. Any facial bleeding would land right where she stepped. Yet, security video clearly shows a person in a mask heading toward her front door. Witness accounts confirm she was snatched from her bedroom late at night. Sensors also picked up movement inside, which points to an intruder navigating through the rooms. She wasn't moving on her own accord. She was being abducted. That raises a big question. How was she held to leave that specific trail of evidence? Ashley Banfield proposed a scenario based on the facts. She thinks the kidnapper slung her over his shoulder. That would leave her torso and head dangling behind his back. With a head wound in that position, the droplets would fall vertically right behind the attacker's heels. The trail would trace the exact path he took. His shoes wouldn't scuff the marks since he's moving forward while the fluid drops behind. He eventually paused right as he reached the front entrance. Wrestling with a heavy door while holding an 84-year-old woman is tough. During that moment, the blood pooled in one spot, creating those tiny satellite splatters. As he shifted his weight to clear the frame, her body likely moved against his shoulder. If her chest was squeezed, it might have forced out a burst of fluid, explaining that one anomalous cluster in the trail. The doctor was asked if this made sense. He noted it was just as likely as any other theory presented so far. Then, he pointed out a detail that could break the entire case open. If someone carried Nancy over their shoulder, blood from her head would have likely dripped right onto the killer's back. Just let that sink in. After a crime, people usually scrub what's right in front of them. They check their pants, their shirt, their hands, and their shoes. But they often forget about their back. Since it's out of sight, they never realize the fabric between their shoulders is completely stained. If this holds up, there's a jacket or shirt out there with a bloody back that he never thought to wash. It might be in a closet or a trash bin right now, just waiting to be found. These are the small things that bring killers down. It's the one piece of evidence they were too blind to get rid of. This raises a major follow-up question. If the assault happened in her room, why aren't there any stains until you reach the front door? According to Dr. Valentine, this is a frequent point of confusion during criminal investigations. People often assume the crime happened right where the blood is found. However, wounds don't always leak right away. It takes time for fluid to pool. It has to seep through layers of skin and clothing before it can even fall. Consider how your own scrapes behave. There's often a gap between the impact and the bleeding. A finger nick might take a few seconds to bead up, while deep trauma might bleed internally first. It's the same deal here. Nancy might have been hurt in her room, but her hair or clothes could have soaked up the blood at first. The volume built up as she was moved. By the time they reached the foyer, it finally started to overflow. This makes the whole sequence even more chilling. It looks like she was subdued in her room without a trace. She was moved past the kitchen and through the hall without leaving a single drop. The leaking only started at the exit. Maintaining that kind of stealth isn't just luck. This wasn't a panicked mistake or an impulsive act. This was the work of someone who was methodical and experienced. Sources tell Banfield that when deputies arrived on February 1st, they figured they were just looking for a missing senior who had maybe wandered off. Maybe she got disoriented. But once the pros showed up, they knew this was heavy. They found the back door wide open. It wasn't just left unlatched, it was swinging open. Her relatives mentioned that she usually didn't bother locking the back entrance anyway. People in the Catalina foothills often feel secure enough to leave doors unbolted. But a closed, unlocked door is very different from one standing agape. You'd normally have to check the knob to see if it's open. A wide open door is a glaring red flag for anyone walking by. Walking in the front, the police could see right through to the patio out back. That open door reveals exactly how the intruder got in and out. He probably slipped in through the back, likely knowing she didn't lock it. Then he made his way straight to her room. He overpowered her there without making a mess. Then he began hauling her through the living areas toward the front of the home. Somewhere along the way, her wounds started to seep. By the time they reached the entryway, the droplets were finally hitting the floor. He paused at the door to open it, and the blood pooled. He shifted her weight, stepped outside, and kept moving down the path. The trail ends exactly where a car would be waiting. Once she was inside the vehicle, either the position changed or the wound was blocked, and the leaking ceased. Then Nancy vanished into thin air. Even lacking eyewitnesses or indoor security video, the physical evidence reconstructs the entire event. These tangible clues map out a sequence of actions and dominance. Yet, they also point toward a detail that police likely overlooked. Dr. Valentine highlighted a chilling fact that anyone tracking this investigation needs to hear. A person only spots the clues they expect to see. If you approach a crime area with a skewed perspective on what went down, you might step right over the proof of the truth. During the initial sweep of Nancy's residence, did the forensics team realize they were looking at a meticulously executed kidnapping? Were they hunting for faint indicators in the bedroom showing how she was overpowered? Did they scour every inch for microscopic debris left behind while a grown man carried an 84-year-old woman through the halls? Or was their focus strictly on finding chaos and brutality? They likely scanned for flipped tables, shattered glass, or messy scuffles. Instead, they handed the property back to the family about 30 hours after she went missing. When questioned if that quick release was the right move, Dr. Valentine didn't hesitate with his answer. "I would have kept that property locked down for every second possible." This is crucial because Dr. Valentine's background as a detective and lab expert for the Connecticut State Police taught him how to categorize various investigations. Nancy Guthrie's disappearance belongs in a unique class. It is an instance where the physical lab results are actually steering the whole search. Usually, scientific testing just backs up what officers learn through talking to neighbors, spotting suspects, or figuring out why someone would commit the crime. Lab analysis typically moves alongside the street work, offering extra support. However, in roughly 5 to 10% of files, the forensics take the wheel. If those clues aren't there, the case completely stalls out. No one saw a thing, there is no smoking gun, and nobody knows why she was targeted. In these scenarios, the tangible proof is the whole ballgame. When that is all you have got, you guard it with your life. You keep the area cordoned off. You comb through it step by step. You return again and again as fresh theories pop up. This specific situation is part of that rare 10%. The clues found on site are the only narrative we have. Giving the house back after only 30 hours might have ruined our chances of hearing the full tale. Certain objects left behind could have changed everything if they were bagged right away. That rug at the front entrance sat outside for several weeks. Reporters even took pictures of it. It was just sitting there for every passerby to see. Dr. Valentine pointed out that the doormat could have been a goldmine for tiny particles linking a killer to the porch. We are talking about car carpet strands or dirt from a distinct area. Tiny bits from a jacket or sneakers could have been hidden there. Sifting through a floor mat is tedious business. You would have to pick through thousands of specks of ordinary dust and grime. Yet, among all that junk might be the single thread or grain of sand that solves the mystery. That rug needed to be bagged, tagged, and stored instantly. Instead, rain, wind, and people's boots likely ruined any potential lead. The wall mount for Nancy's front door camera was another thing they ignored. The person who took her had to rip that device down. He definitely put his hands on that hardware. He wrestled with it. If he was holding a small flashlight in his teeth, spit would have gotten on his hands or gloves. That DNA would have rubbed off onto the metal mount. While detectives finally took the bracket into evidence, they waited about 3 weeks to do so. At that point, any biological samples were likely useless or gone. Dr. Valentine labels these as unforced errors, the kind of blunders made when things get tense that you can never fix. It is the stress of different departments clashing, the heat from the news cameras, and the weight of dealing with a very famous family. These factors force a team to rush so they can look like they are winning. They start moving fast instead of being careful, and Dr. Valentine knows that haste always leads to big slip-ups. At the start of the probe, Sheriff Nanos was questioned if he harbored any regrets about his initial choices. Back then, he admitted he might have messed up by letting the house go. He mentioned that looking back with perfect hindsight, he likely should have kept the area taped off for a few more days. "I trust my guys. If anyone else wants to help, we are not hiding anything. But yeah, I probably should have waited on releasing the property." That was a clear confession. He knew the search ended too early. However, 52 days after the fact, he changed his tune during a sit-down with the local news. "I am proud of what my people did. I do not think we let the house go too early, and I stand by every decision we made." The guilt he showed earlier has vanished, replaced by a narrative of perfection. While Dr. Valentine did not call him out on the flip-flop, his warnings about high-stress policing tell the whole story. Let's look at what the red stains reveal regarding Nancy's condition. The amount seen in pictures is definitely noticeable, but it is not a huge pool. This was not a fatal wound that would kill someone in a matter of minutes. Dr. Valentine weighed his words carefully here. Someone would need a doctor for this, but they would not necessarily die from it. Yet, we have no idea if she had internal damage that did not leave a mark on the floor. We are in the dark about her state once she left the driveway. We have no clue if her captors gave her any first aid. Those splatters only show one moment and one cut. They do not give us the full picture of the trauma she went through. Savannah Guthrie's latest update made it sound like the family is just hoping to recover her body for a proper burial. Those words imply they have lost hope she is alive, yet the sheriff took a different approach on camera, begging the abductor to release her. Just hand her over. Let her walk away. Leave her at a doctor's office or an ER. Just walk away. This plea makes it seem like the sheriff thinks there is still a chance she is breathing. These conflicting views highlight the agonizing mystery that has dragged on for 52 days. The lab work does not settle the debate either way. We only know that when she was dragged out, she was hurt enough to bleed, but not enough to die instantly. Anything that happened after they reached the car remains a total mystery that the stains cannot solve. There is one more vital detail buried in the splatter. The car used to take Nancy definitely has blood inside it. Dr. Valentine was absolutely certain on this point. The trail of drops ends abruptly on the pavement. That spot is exactly where someone would have been loaded into a backseat or trunk. Once she was shifted from his arms into the car, the wound likely shifted away from the ground, or perhaps the attacker tried to plug the cut to avoid a mess. However, before she was settled, those drops were falling, and some landed inside the getaway ride. That is the smoking gun here. Scrubbing blood out of a car interior is nearly impossible. Most killers stop wiping as soon as the red stain vanishes, but the biological footprint stays behind. You cannot see those traces with just your eyes, but high-tech chemicals can light up that car like a Christmas tree, even if it looks spotless. Even if the culprit spent all night scrubbing that car with bleach and industrial cleaners, those latent blood traces would likely still show up, and they would belong to Nancy. That would prove she was in that specific car while she was bleeding out. It would provide the physical link between the vehicle, and essentially the driver, to this crime. Finding that car is the top priority, according to Dr. Valentine. The blood proves it exists. It is somewhere out there, holding the answers we need. Agents have been canvassing her neighborhood, looking for any doorbell or security footage from that time frame. They are piecing together a log of every car in the vicinity. Once they find the right vehicle, the lab work becomes a simple task. They just need to find the blood, match it to Nancy, and build the file. Yet, 52 days in, no one is in handcuffs. No car has been identified to the public. From the outside, it looks like the whole thing has hit a wall. Dr. Valentine noted this is a rare situation where the case is just waiting on forensic clues to point the way. Without those clues, the detectives are basically stuck. And when a case sits for 52 days, the chances of solving it drop with every tick of the clock. However, the blood reveals something else about the attacker. Those steady, vertical, circular drops suggest a person who was remarkably composed. There was no panic or chaotic rushing through the rooms. He entered through an unlocked back door, went to her room, and took control without leaving a mess. He moved her through that house with such slow, deliberate steps that the blood falling behind him made perfect circular patterns. He paused at the front door for quite some time, dealing with the exit while Nancy's blood formed a pool at his feet. Crossing the threshold, he moved down the path with chilling deliberation before loading her into a precisely positioned car. We are definitely dealing with a cold, methodical individual rather than a reckless one. We see a strategist who orchestrates every detail to maintain total dominance. During that 1:47 a.m. clip, the disguised intruder angled his body away from the lens, intentionally glancing in the opposite direction. 46-year Pima County Sheriff veteran Rick Castigar reviewed the tape, noting that the guy obviously spotted the surveillance setup beforehand. You do not just stumble onto those details mid-act. That is pre-planned legwork. Criminals pinpointing security measures do so during a casing phase, not while they are actually committing the offense. If the January 11th date is right, he was watching her house 3 full weeks before the abduction happened. He had 3 weeks to learn her schedule, find the unlocked door, and plan the snatch. The blood inside her home proves the camera footage wasn't a fluke. This was a professional, calculated job. Now, we have to consider what this does to her family. For 52 days, Nancy's family has been stuck in limbo, wondering if she's alive, if she's in pain, or if they'll ever know the truth. Finding traces of blood right by the doorway makes this tragedy even more gut-wrenching, as it proves Nancy was attacked within her private sanctuary. It is the one spot where she should have been completely secure. Savannah Guthrie has spoken about her mother being snatched from her own bed in the middle of the night. The thought of an 84-year-old being snatched from her sanctuary haunts everyone. The blood proves it. She was in bed when someone broke in. Someone broke in, moved through the halls, carried her to the exit while she bled, and then vanished into the night. The family put up over $1.2 million for her return. The FBI joined in, and Pima County investigators are on it every day. Yet 52 days on, we're still mostly in the dark. That blood in the house did answer one thing: where she first started bleeding. We've mapped her path out of the house. The marks show she was carried, not dragged or walking. But the biggest questions remain unanswered. Where is she? Who did it? Why? Dr. Valentin said something that should hit home for everyone. In most cases like this, high pressure causes unforced errors, and those mistakes just muddy the waters. The choice to release the scene in 30 hours, not grabbing the mat and camera mounting hardware immediately, and rushing the job rather than being thorough. These calls were made under massive heat. Between the high stakes, a famous family, and the media circus, the pressure was through the roof. But those choices might have botched the case, and now, 52 days later, we're seeing that play out. Faulty forensics can ruin everything. Now the whole thing seems stalled. Dr. Valentine says every crime scene tells a story the moment you walk through the front door. It's about how someone lives and keeps their home. You look for what's out of place. The trick is spotting what's different from the usual. You can't spot the weird stuff until you know the routine. And the only way to get that is by being methodical with the scene. You walk through every room, record every detail, and let the house tell you what happened instead of guessing. He likens it to a book. If you skip chapters, you lose the plot and the characters. You miss the small details that make sense later. Crime scenes are the same. You work through it carefully. You let the evidence lead you. You don't rush to judgment. In this case, did they look for signs of how she was held? Did they check every inch for trace evidence? Did they realize this was a controlled hit? Or did the need for a quick win cause them to overlook the small stuff? We just don't know. Dr. Valentine worries that clearing the site after only 30 hours implies haste over hard science. If you let outside stress dictate a probe, you overlook clues and blow the entire case. Amidst all the talk of forensics and police work, we can't forget the basics. Nancy Guthrie isn't just some blood evidence. She's not just a file or a riddle. She's a mom and grandma who spent 84 years rooted in the community she loved so much. She had her friends and her daily life. She had a safe home and a family. 52 days ago, she was just asleep in her bed. Within hours, a stranger broke in, took her from her bed, carried her through the house while she bled, and took her away. Her family has spent 52 days in agony. The family is haunted by her pain and the fear they might never reunite. Watching Savannah Guthrie on the news daily, the heavy burden of sorrow and the frantic search for closure are written all over her face. Nancy's grandkids are moving forward, yet they're forced to mature without their missing grandmother, who might stay gone forever. This isn't just a police file. This is about a household torn apart. As each day goes by with no resolution, their heartache only grows. The crimson stains found within Nancy's residence reveal a portion of what occurred. The stains reveal her exact location during the initial attack and the path of her forced relocation. They show an assailant acting with chilling, calculated precision, yet her actual whereabouts remain hidden. We still don't know her condition or the identity and motive of her attacker. The truth is hidden somewhere. It's inside that blood-stained car. It's on the back of those discarded garments. The proof might be on security tapes or within the head of the intruder who ruined this family. For 52 days, the public has focused solely on the unknown. People obsess over rumors, guesses, and unanswered riddles. However, a breakthrough has surfaced. We've identified the specific blood placement at the scene. We understand the trail it left behind. Those droplets expose a high level of calculated intent and dominance. While the full picture is still fuzzy, this fragment of reality is vital. In such tangled investigations, every fact counts. Each minor discovery pulls us toward a clearer realization of the events. New findings spark hope that a bystander might spot a clue that finally brings Nancy back home. This biological evidence serves as a chapter in Nancy's narrative. It's a tale that needs an ending. It's a situation that cries for closure. For the sake of Nancy and Savannah. For a lineage that has spent 52 days seeking clarity that might never actually come. If you feel this case needs solving, follow Crime Uncovered. Press like if you think this family deserves justice. Leave a comment below. What's your theory on those 16 minutes spent moving from the sleep quarters to the exit? At Crime Uncovered, we refuse to settle for half-finished police work. We insist on superior scientific analysis. We stand up for loved ones needing honest facts. For Nancy, for accountability, for truth. Behind every headline is a human life. And Nancy Guthrie's case reminds us of something we should never forget. Evil does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it comes quietly, deliberately, and leaves behind a family living in unimaginable pain. That is why this story is not only about crime, it is about vigilance, compassion, and responsibility. We live in a world where many people assume safety is guaranteed by routine, familiar neighborhoods, or the simple belief that it could never happen here. But tragedies like this teach us that awareness matters. Checking on elderly loved ones, securing doors and cameras, noticing unusual activity, and taking threats seriously can save lives. Small precautions are not paranoia. They are love in action. This case also teaches a deeper moral lesson. Every victim is more than evidence, more than a mystery, and more than a news story. Nancy was a mother, a grandmother, and a woman who deserved peace in her own home. When someone is taken, an entire family is wounded with them. So let this story move us toward empathy, not just curiosity. Let it remind us to protect the vulnerable, demand truth, and never grow numb to another family's suffering. Justice begins when people care enough not to look away,